During your workday, do you ever use AI with a pretty repetitive task or a workflow? And you do great one day and you get a great result, but then the next day you try again and you're just not able to replicate that. Well, to solve that, both ChatGPT and Claude has these things called skills. So what is a skill? A skill is just a markdown file that pretty much gives ChatGPT and Claude repeatable instructions for a certain workflow. So not only does it give you similar results, but it also speeds up the time to use it. So instead of having to write out a long prompt, it just you hit dash and then the skill, or there's some kind of hook that grabs the skill and uses it. You've probably seen skills before, at least when you talk to AI, especially those two models, because a lot of the times you will see it as it's thinking, it'll bring up a skill file. Some of these are like Excel. If you ask it to generate you an Excel document, it actually has a skill file specifically for that, and also PowerPoints. And I've watched a lot of videos on skills, and most of the time it's hard to watch them and then after the video knowing exactly how to implement them. So in this video, I'm going to give 3 examples of skills that you could use in your own daily work life. At least one of them you should be able to take and use right away. So we will head to our Claude, just starting out. So I checked this today, and ChatGPT Plus, that version of ChatGPT or that subscription, does not have skills. At least I couldn't find it. At my job, I do have the ChatGPT Enterprise, and I do have access to it. I believe you also get access to it with the business account and possibly a higher subscription with the personal ChatGPT. I know with Claude, I just have the Pro plan, which is a $20 a month one, and I do have access to the skills. Most of my skills are usually on desktop for Claude Code or Codex, but to actually go look at your skills, just so you guys are familiar with infrastructure and where they're located, you hit Customize, go to Skills, and then you have your personal skills. And then if you have any personal plugins, you will also have skills here. So we'll head back to the personal, and on ChatGPT, it should be in right around the same area. It's usually on the left-hand panel, and then you go into it. Sometimes it is in the settings at the bottom. So if you click over there, it might be in there. For both ChatGPT and Claude, they have a skill creator. And so this is their own skill that they give everybody to create skills. That's what makes it easy to create skills. A skill file is mostly a skill MD or the specific instructions, the introduction, and any guardrails with it. Then you can have other assets with that. And what I mean by that is a good way to think about it is it's a folder, and then you have your MD file, which is the instructions, and then anything else in that folder file usually is stuff that the skill calls on, whether it's an output or whether it's like a Python script that's within it. But if you want to look at it, you can go to your skill MD and then see the anatomy of a skill. And it just gives you the skill MD, the YAML formatter, the markdown instructions, bundle resources, scripts, references, and assets. And then you could definitely read more into this if you guys want to know more. But this is just a backend, and to actually create a skill, it's not that hard. And what's nice about skills is not only once you create it, it makes your workflow faster and repeatable, but you can also share it with other people in your company or other friends or family, whoever has ChatGPT or Claude. Also, you can share it between platforms. So if I build a skill on Claude, then I could take it over to ChatGPT and use it there. So it's really flexible, but you definitely don't have to understand this backend when you're getting started. It's really easy to actually create a skill, and we'll go over that now. So I wanted to give 3 examples. The first example is I want a skill that will make anything I'm working on actually sound in my tone of voice. So we have this prompt here, which is basically just so I investigate how I write. And I'm going to copy in some sample text that I have. And this is another thing about skills that is different from, let's say, custom GPTs or projects or artifacts. is you can pretty much call on it in any chat you're at. And so pretty much any chat you could run the workflow. So I'll go ahead and find some actual text that I could put in. I think I found some writing that I had. Surprisingly, I don't have a lot more. I thought I would be able to find some. But this is just a prompt to analyze my writing, so you can put your examples here. And we'll go ahead and send that. So it gave me a question, and I just said to use previous writing examples. ChatGPT is pretty great because turns out I don't have a lot of writing examples besides stuff I put into AI. So we'll let that actually run. I was going to add this chat that I recently did. Let's see what it says. I'm going to delete that and let it work. So it asked for a couple more writing examples, and I went and found some. I did really dig for those. I'm surprisingly not writing a lot. Overall, the goal is to pretty much give it enough so it can basically get a fingerprint of how I speak. And then once we get that figured out, and then we will actually turn that into a skill. So anytime I want to write an email, want to write a report, I'll just be typing and then hit that as a skill. And once this finishes up, I'll show you how to turn it into a skill and then also how to actually deploy it. And then we got 2 more examples after this. Okay, so it just finished up. We have our tone, sentence style, vocab, structure, personality, void, the rewrite test, a couple of bullets. And awesome, we already have it asking us because it was included in the prompt. But usually, as you're working with ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, if they have skills, if you do something and it gives you good results and you're going to repeat it most of the time, you just, once you get those results, be like, can we also turn this into a skill? And so that's how easy making a skill is. You just have to talk to it and it can create you a skill. So here's my prompt, and I added just a little bit more to this. So I added in what's called a hook, and that's basically what calls it, or it tells AI to call the skill. So if you are using ChatGPT or Claude and you ask it to generate an Excel file, if you look at when it's actually thinking, those lines it brings up, it will usually grab an Excel MD file, which is a scale file on how to build Excels. And so that is what we want. And when you actually create it and upload it to your Claude or your ChatGPT, you either have a hook or you can manually call in the skill. And we'll show an example of that once we actually begin. So easy so far, right? So things to keep in mind, a skill is just a workflow with some context files with it. And it's really easy to make. All you have to do is ask it to make a skill. And the last thing is the hook, which is basically just whenever you say certain keywords, it will call the skill. And as you can see, as it's working, it was using the skill MD file that we just looked at in the customize section. Scratch that. It's not a hook. That's just for Claude Code. So it's actually the description, which it even explains that it reads these skills every time before it takes action. So keep that in mind and scratch that what I said about hook, unless you do have Claude Code. Then there you go. So it just finished up actually creating the skill. So it gives you 2 skills, and I double checked it just to make sure, but you just have to install this one. And you have a couple options to do this. Both ChatGPT and Claude is similar. You could just hit save skill and it should upload directly into your Claude or your ChatGPT. So in this case, it did give me 2, which I was pretty confused about. But the second one is just so I can read the raw content without unzipping anything. So that was just one to see. So I went ahead and saved the skill. And so to check to make sure it worked, you just go back to your customize skills and you see mine there. So now we will go ahead and show you how to actually call on the skill. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. So if you click that dash, that forward dash, you then have your skills, which the chase voice is right there. And then you have small business skills, and these are all the ones from your plugins if you have any. So you just hit enter, and then we will go ahead and put a prompt in. So just wrote a pretty simple email, and we'll go ahead and look at the results. As you can see, it's checking the voice scale for writing it in my own voice. And then we have it. So once you actually do this on your own AI, you would have to make some changes if it still doesn't sound like you. So there's another way you can actually call on it, and that's the description / hook. In this case, it would just be the description. So hopefully if this works, I should be able just to write out, I want to send an email. Can you help me write this? So I just said I want to drop the email to my boss and to ask him what the next steps is. We'll go ahead and see if it actually grabs that skill. Let's see it. Which reports? Let's go ahead. So we're just going to say that, and hopefully it will grab the skill. It should. Awesome. It is grabbing it right now, so you know it is actually using the skill. Awesome. So it's working the skills all up, and then it's something that you would continuously tweak if you're seeing results that you don't like. And you'll go always ask AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, to make edits to the skill. I've actually done this a lot with the YouTube pipeline skill. I had to make a lot of edits, so I would just tell it, and it was pretty easy to edit. The only thing is you do have to upload it again or save it again. For some reason, it's not able to actually go in there and make edits, at least at the time of this video. So we got the skill, how to create it down. We got one example down. We got down descriptions / hooks down, and you can also edit it. So the only thing left is I want to show you 2 other workflows that we can do that maybe you can actually take home and use. So we'll go ahead and go to new chat. With this example, we're going to actually clean up an Excel file. So this could be useful because if you have a report that you're pulling every week, CRM, and you have to manually clean it up, then this is an example of a really great skill or workflow that you can create. So I'm going to copy in my prompt that I'm using for this, and I also generated an Excel file to use. So we'll go ahead and add that. There we go. So before we start, I'll go ahead and show you the Excel sheet. So a little bit pretty right there. We just want everything to be formatted the same. We're missing a number here. And so say you have a similar Excel sheet with this, and it even works even better if you know each column and some mistakes that usually happen. The more detail you could put in, the better. And also what fields are required. So for example, this is definitely required. And if you put that in the prompt of what it should be, and there should also be no duplicates, then it will make your skill even better once you do it once, and then you actually publish this. So again, all this stuff is synthetic data. So that is our before. We're just going to go ahead and hit it. So most of the time too, I will actually not create a skill until I actually test the workflow or I actually do something that is successful. And then if that was successful, then I will ask it to take that specific task we did and create a skill from it. And this could be anything from research. Say there's certain websites you like to go. You can be very specific on it. Like if it checks Reddit, then it checks Hacker News or something like that. And really it's just sky's the limit with skills along with most things in AI. So go ahead and let that run. As this is running, we'll just look at the prompt a little bit more. So I put in some default cleanup rules, and that's just trim extra spaces, standardize names, and some other information. Anything that I normally see with a data set, I put this in. I do have one example of this that I actually use at work. So in this spreadsheet, we have an AI chatbot, and as responses come in, we have our subject matter expert actually read them, and then if they need to, put an updated answer. But that's in Google Sheets, and I want to actually put that into our AI chatbot to train it. So I have a skill specifically where I take the CSV from Google Sheets, put it into ChatGPT, and then the skill turns it into a JSON file or a text file that is formatted in FAQs that actually work really well with the AI chatbot. And I discovered this when I was actually trying to train the chatbot. So once I found that out, then I just turned that into a reusable skill. And so oftentimes that'll just be the workflow is as you're doing something, you're like, oh, this is extremely good output and extremely useful. Then you turn that into a skill like that. So it just finished up and it went ahead and built me the scale MD file, which I actually forgot, but I asked it in the prompt. And first, we just want to make sure that the cleanup actually looked correct. Looking at it, it does look cleaned up compared to the ref draft. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So for the state, pretty much standardized it. For the pro, or for the planet, standardized it. Also for the money, we saw it all standardized. And again, this is something that you would check. And then if you did want to make some edits, you would just ask it to. And then we have the actual skill and we could just save it again. So pretty easy with that. And then we will actually view it. So this is the description. And one thing you could tell too, especially when you have it build your skill, is just what will actually trigger it. So if you say anything along the lines of clean this up, fix this, export, then it will actually trigger this skill. And if you don't want it to, you could take that out of the description and then you could just use it manually every time with the dash. So it just depends what you're using it for. So we'll do one last sample. From this example, we are going to take messy notes and turn them into an actual SOP. And maybe you have in a different format, or you can just talk to it, use the dictate and actually explain the process. But for this use case, we're just going to do this. And we are going to actually do the workflow. I know I said it last time, but this workflow, we will ask it to perform the task. And then once it does do it good, we'll ask it to create a skill based on that. So just finished and we have our SOP from this. And one thing you can also do is you can also add your own company's formatting. So we'll go ahead and do that. And so we'll go ahead and try to find that. We have our style reference guide and we'll send that. And so what this does is it'll just make the skill also use your style reference guide so that you are producing the same SOP each time. You could do this with branding too. Say if you take notes every month and want to create PowerPoints and create a skill for that, then you can do that. So we'll just go ahead and let it work. So just finished up applying our structure guide, so we can go ahead and view that. So this is what requested, so everything looks there. And then the next thing we would do, we would just ask it to actually turn this into a skill. So I'll use this prompt here. Just a reusable skill. I briefly outline the workflow and we'll go ahead and send this. And then I'll just show you that it worked. My Wi-Fi has been terrible, so it might be more than a few minutes. We'll see. It just finished up. So we have our SOP builder skill. Gives that. So it's given me it twice, but you can go ahead and look through it. So again, it's super easy to build skills. It helps you create repeatable workflows and it helps you get repeatable answers. You can also share these skills across different platforms and with coworkers. And then there's also a ton of repositories out there with skills, all different types of skills that you guys can either use, download, and then Claude even has their plugins that have their own individual skills. So there's just so much information out there. So I definitely recommend going to check them out. But those are 3 repeatable use cases. And as you're using AI, just think, oh, am I going to be using this again? Is this a good output that I'm getting? And if so, just have it create a skill. And if you don't use it, then at least you get the knowledge of doing it. But the 3 again is one is a skill for writing in your own tone of voice. The second one is cleaning an Excel file. And the third one is a SOP builder. So any of these skills you could probably apply to your work, hopefully, at least the first one. If you like this video, my name is Chase and I create content like this that actually takes real applicable workflows that you can use in your everyday work. So if you guys like that kind of content, then head over to my channel.